I let my work nemesis humiliate me just to save face at my ex's wedding. The microphone feedback squealed. It cut through the open-plan office like a dentist drill. I stood on a chair. My chair. The ergonomic mesh was digging into my socks because I had taken my shoes off. Why'd I take my shoes off? Because Sarah told me to. And right now, Sarah owned me. I looked down. 40 faces looked back. Engineers. Marketing. The intern who eats glue. They were all silent. The only sound was the low, steady hum of the server room and the blood rushing in my ears. I cleared my throat. It tasted like stale coffee and shame. Mark Reynolds, I said. My voice cracked. Perfect. Do hereby admit that I possess the intellectual capacity of a damp sponge. I paused. I looked at Sarah. She was leaning against the break room doorframe. She looked pristine. Sharp blazer. Sharper eyes. Her hair was pulled back in a bun, so tight it probably acted as a FA3 sea lift. She took a slow sip of her tea. She didn't blink. She just tapped her wrist. I took a deep breath. And I further admit that Sarah Jenkins was right about the SQL migration. Her code was efficient. My code was garbage. She is the alpha coder. I am but a humble script kiddie. There was a scattering of applause. Mostly from Sarah. She walked over. The click of her heels on the linoleum sounded like gunshots. Click, click, click. She stopped at the base of my chair. She handed me my shoes. Pleasure doing business with you, Mark, she whispered. Her voice was smooth. Dangerous. Pick me up tomorrow at 6. Don't be late. I climbed down. My dignity was gone, buried under a mountain of bad code and public groveling. But I had secured the asset. I had a date for the wedding. Let's rewind. 3 days ago, I opened my mailbox. Real mail. A cream-colored envelope. Heavy stock. You could feel the money in the paper texture. It was from Jessica. Jessica, who left me 6 months ago because I lacked ambition. Jessica, who was now marrying a guy named Chad. Or Brad. It didn't matter. He was a venture capitalist. He had a jawline that could cut glass and a bank account that could buy a small island. I was an inflated balloon of anxiety. I couldn't go alone. If I went alone, I was the sad, lonely ex-boyfriend who peaked in college. The narrative writes itself. I needed a shield. A weapon. A power partner. I scanned my contacts. Mom. No. My sister. Too weird. Then, I looked across the office partition. Sarah. We have hated each other since orientation. She corrects my grammar in Slack. I leave the whiteboard markers uncapped just to watch her twitch. It's a war of attrition. But objectively, she is successful. Sharp. Scary. If I walked in with Sarah, I wasn't the loser. I was the guy who tamed the tiger. I cornered her by the water cooler. The conversation was a negotiation. A hostage exchange. I need a date, I said. Saturday. Jessica's wedding. She laughed. A cold, dry sound. No. I'm desperate, I said. I'll do anything. She stopped. The air in the room shifted. The temperature dropped 5 degrees. She looked at me. A slow, predatory smile spread across her face. Anything, she asked. Anything, I promised. She pulled out her phone. She opened the ticket for the SQL migration. The one we had argued about for 3 weeks. Admit it, she said. Publicly. Loudly. In front of the whole team. I hesitated. My pride screamed. Then I looked at the cream-colored invitation on my desk. Fine, I said. Saturday. 5:55 p.m. I was sweating. The AC in my Honda Civic was trying its best, but the panic was winning. I pulled up to her apartment complex. I texted her here. 2 minutes later, the front door opened. I actually stopped breathing. I'm used to Sarah in armor. Structured blazers. Buttoned-up collars. That severe bun held together by a pencil in sheer rage. She usually looks like she's ready to fire someone. This was not that Sarah. She was wearing a dress the color of emeralds. It was backless. It was dangerous. Her hair was down, cascading in dark waves that framed a face I suddenly realized I didn't know as well as I thought. She walked toward the car, and for a second, my brain short-circuited. I forgot she was the enemy. I just saw a woman who looked like she stepped out of a Bond movie. She opened the passenger door. A scent hit me. Not ozone and whiteboard markers. Vanilla. Dark chocolate. Something expensive and musky. Close your mouth, Mark, she said. You'll catch flies. The spell broke. You look. I struggled. Adequate. I look expensive, she corrected. Drive. And try not to stall. It ruins the vibe. The drive was pure psychological warfare. The silence in the car was thick. We need a story, I said, gripping the steering wheel. If people ask, how do we meet? Sarah checked her lipstick in the visor mirror. We met at work. Obviously. Too boring, I said. We need romance. We met at a poetry slam. She looked at me like I had grown a second head. I don't slam poetry, Mark. And you look like the only thing you slam is Mountain Dew. Okay, fine. We met Saving a kitten from a storm drain. No. We met at a tech conference, she decided. I was giving a keynote on efficiency. You were in the front row, taking notes. You were intimidated by my brilliance, but you bought me a drink afterwards. A whiskey sour. Because you respect my complexity. I glanced at her. That is terrifyingly detailed. Details sell the lie, Reynolds. Also, we've been dating for 4 months. Enough time to be comfortable, not enough time to be talking about marriage. It's the sweet spot. For months, I repeated. Got it. What's my favorite color? Blue. Like your error screens. Funny. What's yours? Revenue green. I laughed. Despite the nerves, I felt a weird sense of calm. Sarah had a plan. Sarah always had a plan. We arrived at the venue. A vineyard. Gravel crunched under the tires. Sarah hooked her arm through mine. Her grip was tight. Clinical. Like she was handling a malfunctioning printer. Relax your shoulders, she hissed. You look like you're walking to the gallows. I feel like I am, I muttered. My eyes were darting around the entrance. Searching. We walked in. The reception was in a barn. A chic barn. Chandeliers and hay bales. I spotted Jessica immediately. She was laughing near the champagne tower. She looked radiant. And Chabrad was there, his hand on her waist. A bitter pill dissolved in my stomach. I stiffened. Sarah felt it. She dug her nails into my bicep. Mark, stop scanning for her. You look desperate. This is going to be a disaster. I whispered. They look perfect. We look like co-workers playing dress-up. Sarah rolled her eyes. She grabbed 2 flutes of champagne from a passing waiter. Drink. We are not co-workers tonight. You are charming. I am adoring. Fake it. We moved through the crowd like 2 robots programmed to hold hands. It was awkward. Every time she touched my arm, I felt the artifice of it. I was distracted, looking for Jessica. Sarah was annoyed, pulling me back to reality. We were out of sync. Then, dinner was served. We were seated at table 9, the miscellaneous table. It was us, a very old aunt who kept falling asleep, and a cousin named Trent who definitely owned a boat and wanted everyone to know about it. So, Trent said, chewing with his mouth open, how did you two meet? Tinder? Bumble? Christian mingle? I froze. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. Tech conference, she lied effortlessly. Mark was taking notes on my keynote. He bought me a whiskey sour. I was charmed by his persistence. Trent nodded, unimpressed. Cool. So Mark, what do you drive? I just got the new Tesla. A Honda, I said. Civic. Trent scoffed. Cute. Reliable. I felt small. This was exactly what I feared, being the small guy in the room. But then Sarah leaned forward. She put her elbows on the table, invading Trent's space. Actually, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, Mark drives a Civic because he invests 80% of his income. He's building a portfolio that would make your Tesla look like a Hot Wheels toy. He's into stealth wealth. You know, the real money moves in silence. Trent stopped chewing. He looked at me with new respect. Oh, damn. Smart. I looked at Sarah. She winked. Just a tiny, microscopic wink. Stealth wealth. I whispered to her while Trent distracted himself with his phone. Work with me, she whispered back. Then, the speeches started. Trent took the mic. He told a story about a spring break trip to Cabo that involved a donkey. It was excruciating. Sarah let out a snort. A loud, unladylike snort. I kicked her under the table. She kicked me back. Hard. Ow, my mouth. Don't be a baby, she whispered, grinning behind her champagne glass. This is gold. Look at the bride's face. I looked. Jessica looked mortified. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel a pang of longing. I felt amused. I looked back at Sarah. She was mocking Trent's posture, puffing out her chest. I laughed. A real laugh. You're terrible. I'm observant, she corrected. We spent the rest of dinner doing play-by-play commentary on the guests. We roasted the centerpieces. We debated the structural integrity of the cake. The gap between us started to close. The fake touches changed. When she put her hand on my arm to steady herself while laughing, she didn't take it away immediately. When I leaned in to whisper a joke, I lingered in the scent of that vanilla perfume. You know, she said, stealing a piece of bread from my plate. You're actually funny when you aren't moping. And you're actually tolerable when you aren't being a tyrant. I shot back. She smirked, but her eyes were soft. Careful, Reynolds. Don't fall in love. I scoffed. In your dreams. But my heart rate had picked up, and it wasn't because of the speeches. The lights dimmed. The DJ switched from upbeat pop to a slow, heavy ballad. Wicked Game. A classic. We have to dance, Sarah said. Her voice was different. Less commanding. More quiet. We walked to the dance floor. The air was thick. The humidity of the barn mixed with the expensive cologne of the guests. I turned to face her. Usually, there's a protocol. Hands on waist. Hands on shoulders. Leave room for Jesus. I put my hands on her waist. The silk of her dress was cool, but her skin underneath was burning hot. She slid her hands up my chest, linking them behind my neck. We stepped in. The awkwardness from the entrance was gone, replaced by a new kind of tension. High voltage. We swayed. You're doing it again, she murmured. What? Thinking too loud. I looked over her shoulder. I tried to find Jessica. I spotted her. She was arguing with Chad Brad near the exit. They looked miserable. I looked back at Sarah. Sarah was watching me. Waiting. I don't care. I realized aloud. What? Jessica. I don't care. Sarah's eyebrows raised slightly. Oh, yeah. I looked down at her. Really looked at her. The way the fairy lights reflected in her dark eyes. The slight flush on her neck. The way her breathing had synced with mine. So, she whispered. She stepped closer. There was zero space between us now. If you aren't looking at her, who are you looking at? The world narrowed down to a 3-foot radius. The barn disappeared. The bad DJ disappeared. I'm looking at the person who made me apologize to a room full of engineers, I said. She laughed, but it was a breathless sound. He deserved it. He did. My hand slid from her waist to the small of her back. I pulled her in. It wasn't part of the act. It was instinct. She reacted instantly. Her fingers tangled into the hair at the nape of my neck. A subtle tug. A claim. The friction was unbearable. It was the same energy we had during our arguments, the same fire, but twisted into something completely different. I could feel her heartbeat against my chest. Fast. Erratic. Mark, she said. Her voice was a warning. Or maybe a plea. I leaned down. Just an inch. Her gaze dropped to my lips, then back up to my eyes. Her pupils were blown wide. We were teetering on the edge. One more second, and I was going to kiss my work nemesis in front of 200 people. And I wasn't going to regret it. Well, well, well. The voice shattered the moment like a brick through a window. We broke apart. Not completely. Sarah kept a hand on my chest. It was Jessica. And Chabrad. Jessica looked flawless, but her eyes were sharp. She had seen the dance. She had seen the heat. I didn't think you'd actually come, Jessica said. She looked me up and down. Then she looked at Sarah. And you brought a friend. Sarah said. Her voice instantly shifted from soft to steel. Girlfriend. Jessica laughed. It was condescending. Oh wow. Good for you, Mark. I was worried. You know, with the career stuff. Are you still at that little tech firm? Doing what was it? Data entry. It was a power move. A deliberate humiliation. I felt the old shame creep up. I opened my mouth to stammer something about systems architecture. But Sarah stepped forward. She didn't just step in. She stepped up. She moved in front of me. A physical shield in emerald silk. Data entry? Sarah laughed. It was a rich, genuine sound. But her eyes were dead sharks. Oh, honey. You must be confused. Mark doesn't do data entry. Mark leads the entire architecture division. She loomed over Jessica. The power partner was online. Actually, Sarah continued, her voice raising just enough to attract nearby listeners. He's too humble to tell you. Just yesterday, he saw the migration crisis that baffled our entire engineering team. He stood up in front of the whole company and walked us through the solution. It was brilliant. I mean, I'm good, but Mark sees code like poetry. My jaw hit the floor. She was twisting the humiliation. She was taking my lowest moment, the chair incident, and repainting it as a triumph of genius. Jessica blinked. Oh, I didn't know. Of course you didn't, Sarah said, sweet as poison. She grabbed my hand, interlacing our fingers. Tight. Mark doesn't brag. That's why everyone respects him. He's the smartest man in the room, but he never makes you feel stupid. Unlike some people. She glanced at Chad. Chad looked uncomfortable. Anyway, Sarah said, we need champagne to celebrate Mark's promotion. Lovely wedding. The barn smell is authentic. We burst out of the double doors into the cool night air. The silence was deafening. The crickets were chirping. I stopped. I turned to her. My heart was still hammering from the dance. From the defense. You lied, I said. She leaned against the railing, kicking off her heels. I didn't lie. I spun. That's marketing. You said I was the smartest man in the room. In that room. She gestured back to the wedding. Low bar. Why did you do that? I asked. You hate me. She looked at the ground. Then she looked at me. The moonlight hit her face. She looked softer again. The shark was gone. Look, Mark, she said. I can roast you. I can make you stand on a chair. But her, she doesn't get to roast you. Nobody bullies you but me. That's the rule. I stepped closer. The magnetic pull from the dance floor was still there. The rule, I repeated. Yeah. She shivered slightly. I took off my jacket and put it around her shoulders. She pulled it tight. So, she said, looking up at me. Does this conclude the transaction? Debt paid. I looked at her. The dress. The jacket. The smirk that was starting to look less like a weapon and more like an invitation. Actually, I said, I think there's a discrepancy in the logs. Oh really? She raised an eyebrow. Yeah, you defended me. That wasn't in the contract. I think I owe you. Is that so? She stepped closer. How do you propose we settle the account? I thought about it. The wedding dinner had been tiny portions of dry chicken and polite conversation. Grease, I said. And sugar. A palate cleanser. Excuse me. I know a 24-hour diner on the highway. They have a milkshake machine that actually works and fries that will shorten your lifespan by a week. It's on me. She laughed. A real laugh. You know the way to a woman's heart, Reynolds. Get in the car, Sarah. She smiled. All right, but if you let me handle the AUX cord, I might let you keep your dignity. Deal. 30 minutes later, we were sliding into a red vinyl booth at a neon-lit diner. It was a surreal sight. I was in my suit, tie undone. Sarah was in her emerald gown, looking like royalty in a room that smelled of bacon grease and sanitizer. This, she said, dipping a fry into a strawberry milkshake, is better than the wedding cake. Low bar, I reminded her. I was watching her, the way she ate with zero pretension. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, but she somehow made the place look classy. You know, she said, wiping a crumb from her lip. Tomorrow at work, I'm still going to correct your grammar. I know, I said, and I'm still going to leave the whiteboard markers uncapped. She smiled. A real, tired, happy smile. Good. I don't want you to get soft on me, Reynolds. Never. We sat in silence for a moment, but it wasn't the heavy silence of the office or the awkward silence of the drive over. It was comfortable. So, I said, stirring my coffee. Monday morning. The status meeting. What about it? Are we telling them? Telling them what? She played coy, but her foot nudged mine under the table. That the alpha coder and the script kiddie are negotiating a merger? She laughed. She pushed the empty milkshake glass aside. Then she leaned across the table. Her eyes caught the reflection of the neon sign outside. I think, she whispered, her face inches from mine. We keep them guessing. Let them wonder why I'm suddenly approving your pull requests. You're going to approve my pull requests. Don't push your luck. She closed the gap. She kissed me over a plate of cold fries. It tasted like strawberry sugar and expensive champagne. It was messy and perfect, and logical and chaotic all at once. When she pulled away, she looked breathless. Drive me home, Reynolds, she said, before I change my mind and make you debug the legacy code base. Yes, ma'am. I threw some cash on the table. We walked out to the car. I looked at her in the passenger seat. She was already checking her phone, probably planning her next takeover. I smiled. Not bad for a guy with the intellectual capacity of a damp sponge.